see.
It's not focused. Okay. Okay. Cool. Everyone, you can wave to the camera. Thank you. All right, hi, I'm Zach Archer, and I will be doing an informative speech on the different and basic types of coffee roasts. So, coffee is one of the most popular beverages worldwide. In fact, U.S. consumption alone is up to over 3.5 billion pounds of coffee beans per year, according to a recent USDA Foreign Agricultural Service research study in 2019. And as you can see here by the Statista graph, in the last 6 years, it is the highest it's ever been. There are different types of coffees that possess different outcomes of flavors and health benefits. The range of plants is exponentially diverse, making it unique and personalized for each and every coffee drinker. Before we talk about the basic types of coffee roasts, let's talk about coffee in general. So, coffee, there are over 100 species of different coffee plants around the world, and Brazil is one of the leading contributors of coffee worldwide. Coffee contains phytochemicals that can prevent diseases such as certain cancers, but this also depends on the coffee roast. So certain roasts can prevent certain cancers, according to the Journal of Food Science in 2018. And coffee actually comes from a cherry tree. As you can see, the red cherry means that it's ripe and ready to be picked and processed. Inside that red cherry is what's called a green coffee bean. It's not technically green, but we just call it that because it's very earthy in smell, it lacks taste, and is very soft to the touch prior to being roasted. So next, we are going to talk about the 3 basic types of coffee roasts. There is light roast, medium roast, and dark roast. Being a former barista, I had to know these 3 basic types of coffee roasts, but there's also more sub-roasts in between, but we're just going to focus on the 3 main ones today. And as you can see, the 3 basic roasts are very distinct in color, but you should never identify them by appearance alone because certain species will roast to a different color. So for example, if you roast a certain coffee bean to be a medium roast, it may look like a dark roast. All right, and now we're gonna go a little bit more in depth about the roasts themselves. So the light roast has a non-oily surface and it's light brown in color due to the low temperatures used to roast that coffee bean. And they are more acidic than the medium roast and the dark roast. And in the Journal of Food Science in 2018, research showed that the light roast coffee actually helps prevent colon and oral cancers, which colon cancer is the 3rd most common cancer in the United States among men and women. The medium roast does have the oily surface, which is called cracking, which means that at a certain temperature, the beans will start to exude an oil to the surface of the bean. And it has a mid to dark brown color, and it has a very balanced flavor. So it's not as acidic as the light roast, but it's a little bit more acidic than a dark roast. And finally, a dark roast has fully oily surfaces, so it's roasted at such a high temperature that the oils begin to exude through the shell of the coffee bean, and it could be very dark brown or even in some cases a color of black for the coffee bean. And it is the least acidic out of 3 coffees, and it has been proven to be helpful for weight loss and, in the long run, diabetes, according to the Molecular Food Research in 2011. Okay, so to recap what we talked about briefly today, we talked about how there are over 100 different types of species of coffee plants around the world, and that Brazil is actually one of the only places that really contributes to the global coffee trade. And we also talked about how coffee beans come from a cherry that when they're ripe, they're red. So you take the red cherry, take the coffee bean out of it, which is also called the green coffee bean. It's soft to the touch, has an earthy smell, and lacks any flavor due to not being roasted yet. And of course, we also talked about the 3 basic types of roasted coffee, which were light roast, medium roast, and dark roast. And we also discussed how the different attributes, how they can have phytochemicals helping people prevent certain cancers when you consume that coffee. And yeah, so to conclude, roasted coffee beans have an essential process to go through in order for you to brew your coffee. So next time you're about to brew a cup of coffee, think about what it took to make that coffee bean the way it is and the attributes it possesses from what you learned today. Thank you. Are there any questions on the roasting process or how coffee
What's your
beans?
favorite?
What's my favorite? I would say blonde roast is probably my favorite. Actually, a fun fact is that blonde roast is more caffeinated than dark roast. Some people would think that because a dark roast, it's roasted at a hotter temperature, there would be more caffeine. But since blonde roast is more acidic, there's more caffeine in that bean.
So roasting it less makes it more acidic
More
and more
caffeinated.
caffeinated.
Yeah.
Informative.
Is
Very.
blonde roast similar to a light roast?
Yes, a blonde roast, sorry.
A blonde.
Working at Starbucks really takes over your lingo for Starbucks or coffee.
You talked about the dark roast kind of being healthy for us
Yeah.
and how that it can like sometimes prevent diabetes and stuff. Is it like, did it say like how much of consumption of that dark roast like can help you? Or is it
I think just like a normal because dark roast still has caffeine, not as much as like a light roast would, but it has enough to like benefit in that caffeination and energy, allowing that person to expedite the weight loss and down the road like diabetes.
Like the naturally occurring
Yeah.
caffeine.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Any more questions? No? Well, thank you.
Thank you. That's very interesting.